So Evil Dead Rise was released to watch at home 2 days ago. We watched it then, but we couldn't record our review, our spoiler discussion. We already did our review the day it came out.
Yes.
But yeah, it's time to discuss the new Evil Dead film.
Yes.
I have covered every Evil Dead film and the TV series in full spoiler discussion. So this will be the last one for now. But if you want to hear our thoughts or my thoughts, because Kaylee wasn't with the channel on any of those other videos, you can do so. All right, so Evil Dead Rise. How did this film hold up on a second viewing for you, Kaylee?
It's super held up. I mean, I love it even more. Like, I'm really happy with the film, and I just had a great time watching it the second time. Just maybe not as, I mean, seeing it in theaters is a different feeling.
Sure.
Than watching it at home, but I just really love this movie, so I'm happy. What about you? How'd you feel on the second watch?
It's so silly to me, some of the comments that this film and other films get, right? Like, we talk about this kind of stuff on the channel quite often, like other people's opinions, which sometimes I just wish I didn't bother with. But it's hard because, we are putting our opinion out there into the world, and I like to have those conversations, and I like to see the general consensus, and I like to see just kind of to be in the know. And, I saw a decent amount of people, not a ton, but there's a few for sure, that were talking about this film being watered down and like very light on the gore. And as I had said jokingly in my last video, like, people were calling this woke, which, don't even get me started. That is fucking beyond ridiculous. Movies having female characters is woke now. Like, what? Come on. You're not even trying anymore. Not that you ever were. But watered down is just a ludicrous claim to me. Like, for an R-rated theater release movie that is trying to appeal to a wider audience, even though Evil Dead did start as kind of a more culty thing, right, in its origins, the brand name of Evil Dead, while it isn't on the same level as something like maybe Halloween or Friday the 13th, right, those are much more like household names. I'd say it's that like next tier down where it's like mostly everyone's heard of it for sure.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they've seen it or would like it, that's a totally different story. But to say that this one's watered down, I mean, for this kind of release is just crazy to me. And I think that this one is pretty much every bit as violent or gory as the last one, the Fede Alvarez one. Maybe that one's a little more, or maybe, I don't know.
I don't know, honestly.
I never felt like anything in this was watered down. Now, would I want more gore? Would I like a director's cut with more? Of course, always.
Always, yeah. I don't know if the last one and this one, like, I feel like I would need to watch them back to back to judge, like, how gory one is compared to the other. Because I feel like they're very comparable, to be honest.
Sure.
Like, I don't really feel like one is more or less. But, yeah. Watered down is also not something I would ever describe this film with.
No.
I think it is pretty far from watered down. Especially as far as, like, an Evil Dead. I mean, like, the last Evil Dead, I think, has, like, more of a plot, or I don't want to say plot, but, like, the deeper meaning, I guess you could say, compared to, Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. Like, they're amazing movies. They're super fun and very campy and, like, great. But I don't know that there's, like, a lot of, like, metaphors or symbolism or anything in them. And, I think that this one has some great stuff with it, just like the last one. So, I don't know. It doesn't feel watered down at all.
No, for sure. And, of course, 2023 just continues to be the year of the mom.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
at this point, we've probably seen 40 or so horror movies, new 2023 horror movies, in 2023, and it's crazy. It's like 25, 30 of them
Yeah.
are very centric
Yeah.
on this theme of motherhood.
They're all about moms.
It really is
Yeah.
kind of just this very interesting trend that's going on in horror right now. I don't know if that's like, because it's not just family, right?
No.
Like, I feel like Hereditary brought in a lot of focus on like family drama in horror over the last like 5 years since its release. But I feel like this is like this year is very mother centric,
Yes.
mother focused.
Yeah.
But maybe now that we're looking for that pattern, even if it is family drama, we're gonna be like, it's mom.
I know. I mean, we might be kind of doing that self-fulfilling prophecy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that objectively, a lot of the horror movies we've watched have been very mom. So
Yeah.
I think even going forward, I wouldn't be surprised. And maybe next year it'll be about dads.
Maybe. Give us a chance for once. All right, so let's jump into the film. So we start with a drone shot that mimics the opening, shot of Evil Dead, right? The iconic, as a lot of us know, if you've watched behind the scenes documentary type stuff, Raimi wanted that kind of steady cam shot, but of course they didn't have the money for that, so they literally just like attached their camera to a 2x4, and they had a guy on either end of the 2x4, and they just ran
Yeah.
with it, which is just, and I was talking to my client about this earlier, about limitations becoming your strongest attributes, right? Like it really challenges you to be creative, where you don't have the budget, you don't have the means, you don't have whatever. Like, my kids just asked me to have a scene in their little short where it looked like someone was coming up out of the grave. And I had to improvise like very quickly with no money and no time to prep, and within a very short window of time, I was able to achieve this, not perfectly, but I was pretty happy and proud of my accomplishment on that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I think that's some of the bigger wins, and and also it keeps your creative juices flowing. Like, I think what happens to a lot of directors when they're given all the tools is they lose that kind of creativity because they're so overwhelmed with possibility.
Sure.
Right? And
yeah.
when you're limited, it narrows your focus a little bit more, and then you become kind of driven to accomplish something.
Yeah.
Because you're like, yeah, I mean, it'd be so cool if I could get this done. And like, when you have like a huge budget, it's like you can literally do anything.
Yeah.
And so I think you get so overwhelmed by that, like you almost don't know what to do, because you're like, I can do literally anything, So I think, yeah, them using that 2x4, but now we have a kind of a mimic of that. But it ends up being this drone that this guy's flying. And the film is very foreshadow heavy. I will say that. And the audience is very privy to this stuff at this point. Maybe back in the 80s or the 70s, you may be able to get away with this a little bit more. But it's very winky to the audience, and sometimes that can be annoying, and other times it's fine. With a movie like this, where I don't really expect anything out of the plot, and I don't, even though I got something more than, as you had said, the others in the past, like those movies are just straight schlock, gore, shock movies, right? And with these, they're the last two, they've actually tried to have something more to say, while still being an Evil Dead film at the end of the day. And really, our main focus is on the Deadites and the gore and everything, and that's what we're mostly there for, and it delivers in that way. But yeah, I just think that the foreshadowing in this, to me, it doesn't bother me as much as it might in a more like serious toned film with like some big plot twist where you're like, bro, I saw that coming a mile away. Like stuff in this, you know, with Staphne, you know, when it breaks and it has an edge, or when the drone like comes down and he's like, oh, well, you know, the things aren't sharp enough to decapitate you. They'll just fuck up your face. Stuff like that where you're like, okay, those things are going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like that staff is obviously going to be used as a weapon to kill somebody. That drone is of course going to kill somebody. Like they very much, and they do it in a few things in here. I was writing down foreshadowing quite a bit because they really like to kind of wink to the audience a bit, and I don't find it to be too annoying here, but it can be in other films. And I think they might have done it a little too much. It's a little too obvious at times. Like, okay, like obviously that's going to be a thing that comes back because they put such a focus on it. And, and it'd be a little bit better if it was just a little more subtle. But I don't think anyone's ever accused the Evil Dead franchise of being subtle.
Yeah. I wasn't bothered by any of it at all. I liked all the foreshadowing, and I mean, you're right, maybe in a different film, in a different context, I might be annoyed by it, but I honestly think that a lot of, like, especially, like, general, like, horror, like, not general horror, but, like, general public audience members who are going to these, like big horror movies that come out, like Evil Dead Rise. I don't feel like those audience members pick up on the foreshadowing as much, because it's like the horror movie setting kind of takes them off guard, I think.
Sure.
But because we watch it all the time, and we watch movies in general all the time, I think that we definitely can notice that stuff more than maybe the average person. I don't know. And that's not like an intelligence thing. I think it's just like a pattern that you start to pay attention to after you've watched enough movies.
Sure, it's an experience thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I wasn't bothered by any of the foreshadowing, so... Because I just, like, I mean, I know we'll get into it, but I really think, like, one of my favorite things, especially after the second watch in this film, is the atmosphere. I just feel like it's so, it's just so dark. Like, even when in the opening, when it's, like, daylight and stuff, I don't know what the color grading is on it, but there's something with that just makes it, like, ominous. Yeah. It has a really ominous feel, and I love that. So...
I mean,
that has nothing to do with foreshadowing, but
I think that's, that's a testament, because that's how this franchise is when it's being more serious.
Yes.
Right? Like, even though Evil Dead 2 still has a good atmosphere to it, it's just broken up a lot by slapsticky silliness, right? So Evil Dead 2 is a very zany film, but there are scenes that have an ominous darkness to them because it's very Raimi-esque, right? And Army of Darkness to a much lesser degree. Yeah. Even though there are some things, it's so sparingly because the film has entered full-blown parody mode at that point.
Yeah.
And some people like that and some people don't. I mean, there's people who just aren't a fan of the more silly Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Which up until 2013, that's all you had.
Yeah.
Besides the first one, right? So more of the franchise was silly than less.
Not, yeah.
Right? And now it's starting to balance out more. But with Ash vs. Evil Dead being like 30 episodes at 30 minutes apiece, and now it's going to be kind of forever leaning towards silly as far as like the weighing the different tones of the franchise against one another. But I love both, and I've always been a fan. I think that Evil Dead is like the perfect franchise for that reason, because it can be very serious and work, and it can be very silly and work, and it can be both, right? So you've got like Evil Dead Remake, which is completely serious.
Yes.
Just deadpan, like there's nothing about it to me that is silly. No. Right? It's very, very, very serious the whole time. And then you've got like Army of Darkness, which is almost completely silly. Like, completely the whole time. There's nothing in it that's even remotely trying to be serious.
They're like total opposite ends of the spectrum, really.
And then you've got Evil Dead 2, which kind of balances both. And it does the thing. And all three, to me, I love.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that this franchise is able to do that as opposed to something like Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Where you have like the very serious Freddy, and then you go to that opposite end of the spectrum where you have like Freddy's Dead. And it just doesn't work. But Freddy can hover in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? He can be silly and fun, but also dark.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I think he has that ability of being both.
Right.
Or completely dark. But when Freddy's completely silly, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And for this, somehow Evil Dead's able to do it any which way.
Yeah.
And it works.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what that is, but I agree with you. And I think it's definitely one of the, qualities of the franchise that makes it so lovable for so many people. This film, I don't really remember much humor at all in it, though. I think this is a pretty serious one. I was like trying to think if there was any
if there's any
minor jokes, but I don't think there are, honestly. Like even, because it basically it has this opening that's really dark and scary.
Yeah.
And then we get like a brief moment of lightness with the family.
Yeah.
And then that is like over within like 10 minutes. And everything from there is just dark, 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 dark the rest of the film. So I don't think there was any. I mean, it would have been with the kids, right? It's like Staffney and that's it.
If there's any humor in the film, it's sincere humor. Right? It's more serious humor that real people would do in a real situation.
Sure.
Right? There's nothing goofy or silly about the comedy in this movie, if there's almost any. Same with the last one. It's all very sincere humor. It's all very realistic humor. There's no slapstick quality to either of these films. And some people are very much on the side of like, I like my Evil Dead campy and goofy.
Sure. Yeah.
And so they probably don't like these last two entries. But and there's always that debate between Evil Dead fans on whether or not Evil Dead 1, the original from 81, is like straight serious horror, or if it's supposed to be campy, playful fun, silly with horror too.
Yeah.
And I've always been on the side of like, I've watched Evil Dead 1 quite a lot. And it's always been very straightforward to me. It's always been very horror. There's a campiness to it because it's low budget, because it's in the 80s, because of, Bruce Campbell's performance and other characters in that movie's performance to a degree. But I think that it's also just very, it's not trying to be. It's just Raimi's style, but it's a very serious horror movie. And with this, and then of course with Evil Dead 2, it's so much more goofy and more zany. But anyway, these last two have just been wonderful for me, and I love this style. But I'll take Evil Dead anyway.
Yeah. No, right. Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely love these last two, but I'm happy with them. With the whole franchise, and yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's like a good majority of the things that I want to talk about with this film is everything we've said. So if you don't think we're talking about the film, we very much are. Literally all we've been talking about is the film, but we're not talking about specific scenes. So sometimes it might feel
the spoilers yet.
Yeah, no, not really.
But
I want to talk about it because we didn't get to talk about this kind of stuff as much.
Sure, yeah.
And this is important when it comes to the franchise because I can't talk about an Evil Dead film, especially like this new one, a legacy film, without the rest of the franchise and how it mirrors
puts it in context. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So all right, so the house that the girl goes to after the douchey boyfriend. Why does boyfriends always have to be douchey in this? Like the husband's gone, he left. I don't know where Beth's father of her kid is. The dude in the beginning is a total idiot. Like, all the men in this are lame. So that's probably the woke thing in the movie, I guess. Women ruled, boys drool kind of shit. But, yeah. So she goes to the house, which is straight up the house from a classic horror story.
Yeah.
And or Hansel, Gretel and Hansel.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely those vibes. I really like the way it looks, though. It's cool to have it's a very modern cabin in the woods.
Well, it's like a house from, the Alps or something, like
the
Wiener Schnitzel building.
Very, what is the word? I was going to say Swedish, but there's like a...
Oh, I don't know. Angular.
Angular?
That's what you're going to say.
Oh, I can't think
Swiss?
of it.
No? What?
I can't think of it.
I mean, those houses...
There's like a word for...
Those houses are built that way so that the snow doesn't collapse the roof.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's an architectural design for heavy snowfall areas.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the specific type of design is.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the scene in There's Something About Mary. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
You've never seen that movie?
Yeah.
When he's trying to get him on that he's a liar and he's like an architect and he's like, is this, and he uses some bullshit terms that I have no, I'm sure they're real, but I was like, what? That's what that reminded me of. If anybody's seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, did you guys have Wiener Schnitzels where you grew up?
Yes, I think so, but...
They have a very, specific building that they use, which is that building.
Oh, wait, no. I thought Wiener Schnitzels were like a food.
Yeah.
What do you mean, a specific building?
Yeah, they build their own buildings, and they look like that. They're like this. They're the buildings that you see.
Who are building these? What?
That's the company. Wiener Schnitzel builds them like that when they put them in. They don't just buy they don't, what I'm saying, they don't go into a regular restaurant building and say, we're going to put a Wiener Schnitzel in here. They build a Wiener Schnitzel every time. Well, not maybe every single time. But I don't really see Wiener Schnitzels anymore. I don't know are they out of business?
I don't know. I don't know. And now I'm questioning if I don't think I ever had those.
They look exactly like the building in this.
Okay.
But they serve,
yeah.
chili dogs.
Okay.
You never, okay.
Maybe. I don't know.
Anybody?
I'm trying to think.
That's what Wiener Schnitzel buildings always look like. Is this house where they're straight arrowheads. Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Now that we've mentioned every building that's ever existed, that's
some
this shape.
Some architect out there is like, it's not every building.
Yeah, right.
Being 5 building types.
Now the reading of the book, she's reading Wuthering Heights, and that's right.
Yeah,
right?
Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, and the girl on the bed is mimicking her. Of course, we get the later reveal that she's from the high-rise building, which this is after the film.
Yeah.
Which means that now the evil has escaped and is out in the world and infecting these people. Whether or not they can continue after, because once everyone's dead, and doesn't the book have to be read from again, or does it just wait and linger? Because in every single one of these, in every single fucking Evil Dead movie and show, right? They have to read from the book every single time, right? In Evil Dead 1, 2, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2013, Evil Dead Rise, the beginning of Ash vs. Evil Dead, they always have to read from the Necronomicon to let out the evil.
Yes.
But once it's out, is it just until it goes far enough to kill enough people that the line is severed?
There's a radius?
Yeah, once you kill too many people. It's kind of like the bird flu or something where if a disease is too deadly, it rarely spreads very far. When the mortality rate of a disease is too high, like the bird flu, which was 60% mortality, it dies quickly because the hosts die too fast. Yeah. Right? Is that kind of like the Evil Dead? Where
Maybe.
Because they always have to read from the book, and I'm once the evil's out, isn't it out?
Yeah.
Can it just kill the world now? Or does it it gets put back in every time, but no one puts it back in?
I guess I always just thought at the end of every Evil Dead movie, it's out. like it's out there.
Then why have to keep freaking reading from the book?
Well, because they all feel like separate universes.
They are.
Except for Evil Dead 2 and like Army of Darkness.
But then he goes back in time.
Right.
And
but
the Deadites are out at that time.
Yeah, so that, but like, especially at the end of Evil Dead 2013, like I just assume it's out, like it's out there, like the evil's like existing. And then the same thing with this one, I just took it as like, well, that's the end of the world. Like it's gonna just spread indefinitely until everyone is dead because the Deadites want to take over the planet.
I guess in Army of Darkness, he goes to the graveyard and then he says the Klaatu Veratu Niktu thing.
Yeah.
Or and I guess that's what releases the army of the dead.
Yeah.
But he doesn't specifically read from the book. He just says the words that are going to send him home or whatever, but he doesn't. But that's what releases them. But once again, but when he gets there, the dead is already out in the world, right? Because that demon flies down. The witch is there. So I guess in Army of Darkness it is out. So I don't know. I don't know how that works because I guess in Ash versus Evil Dead we get a good indication there because he lets it out.
And it just goes.
Yeah, and it keeps going.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like if we get a sequel to Evil Dead Rise, like an actual sequel, like
and that's just
universe,
we don't get enough.
Then we could actually tell. But based on this movie and based on the opening being like the ending, technically, it's out and it's going to continue to spread because nobody can stop it.
Yeah.
Until Ash shows up and then doesn't stop it, just makes it worse somehow, but lovably.
But it just seems like a dumb place to go back to the woods. Like, you're just isolating yourself. Like, once all three of those are dead,
I don't think it had a choice in, like, because, like, it's infecting people in... Deadite. So, like, the Deadites, like, that's the thing, too, right? Like, in this... Okay, I'm trying to think of all the Evil Dead movies, but they don't all need to be, like
around each other,
right? Like it just starts, and even like in like the lore of it is just like once you read from the book, like whoever is like in that area can randomly be like possessed by a deadite. Sure. But in this film, there's like a point where she has mommy has she's got like the tattoo gun, and she like dips it in her blood and then scratches her daughter with it, and that. Like, I was like, oh, is that, like, infecting her? Because, like, what's the point of... I mean, I get that it's, like, a tattoo gun, so it's, like, it needs ink and, like, it's blood. But it kind of seemed like that was, like, infecting her. But then they all get, like, infected in different points. So, where I was going with that was that the girl in the beginning who's out at the cabin, like, she's just in that apartment building. And if it is, like, whoever's in the vicinity, then anybody that's in that apartment building could have gotten possessed and gone out, into the world. And we're just seeing this one girl that left.
I think what would have been cool introducing this tattoo gun is if, we got Ellie to like pin someone down and we started seeing her like taking her blood and tattooing on this person, and then we cut away and we come back to her, and then like this person comes out and reveals themselves later in the movie, and this person has like been inked in human blood and is like a new translation of the Book of the Dead. Like their body is the Necronomicon.
That would have been creepy. Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like, because even the son, when he gets hurt before he turns. Like all the people that turn seem to get hurt first. Sure,
they have to be like infected.
Right. So
but the first person doesn't seem to, right? Like
she just gets attacked.
Ellie in this.
Yeah.
Just the initial burst of the energy of the Kandarian demon.
Yeah.
Just like comes through and infects, just like, in the first movie with Ash's sister. All that, like it's always like the first person gets like taken by the
wind.
The POV camera.
Yeah, the POV camera comes.
Gets them, and then from there they have to like infect everybody. It's like, but it seems the evil seems to rush out and grab one person, and then that person's supposed to spread the evil.
Person's patient zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It's like it's like a zombie movie in that way. Because this is like a possession / zombie.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, Evil Dead is kind of its own thing.
It really is, because the Deadites, like, they are demons.
Yeah. They're demons.
They're demons, but then there's also moments, too, where the person that's possessed has, like, a bit of awareness as well. Like, in the very beginning.
Oh, sure.
You know, which is scary, because it's, like, when Ellie's, like, saying, like, help me, I'm burning.
That's the possession part.
Right.
Right. That's what makes Evil Dead's Deadites a little different. Is demons, once they've turned, usually they're just demons. Yeah. Usually they just, like the Italian movie Demons 2. Like, once they turn, they're just demons.
Yeah.
Right. But in Evil Dead, it's like they're half demons, half people.
Half zombie.
They're weird, yeah. half man, bat pig. Okay, we're talking about this for way too long. We need to move on because I think we've already been going for like a half an hour, and I don't even feel like we've talked about like a scene from this fucking movie yet. All right, so we have the bed scene. She falls off the bed. She's reading from the book, all that stuff. Which all I was trying to say about that scene is that it is an homage to the first Evil Dead when I think, is it Linda?
I thought it was Linda.
I think it's Linda.
She starts doing
the
cards.
The cards.
Yeah.
Ace of diamonds, right of spades.
It's
like,
great.
She turns around, and that's like the first reveal to them of a Deadite.
Yeah. I love it.
Very, very similar to that scene, and very cool. So then she comes up, she falls off the bed, she goes over, she scalps her, and then now I don't know how far the house is from the dock. I don't know if we can see the house from the dock. Can we?
I think we can. I think it's fairly close.
It's got to be pretty close.
It's like walking distance.
Because she walks all the way over to the dock without her scalp.
Yeah.
And her friend, sister?
No, it's her friend. It's
her friend?
Yeah.
She walks all the way over there with the scalp to then drop it on the dock.
Yeah.
Like, of course, it's just convenient for the movie, right? So that it can fall in the camera and be cool and be like, ugh. The guy can scream and whatever. But I just thought that was funny that she, like, took the scalp with her all the way to the dock and then dropped it.
Yeah.
Like, for what reason?
For scares.
Yeah. I always have to think about things, like, practically when I watch movies, too.
Yeah.
I'm always like, why'd she carry that scalp? What's the purpose? Does it serve any purpose? I don't think so.
Not really.
just yeah. But, I mean, it could, to a degree, right? Because I think people are more susceptible to being possessed if they're like and I think the reason I think of this is because of the Evil Dead video game. When your fear meter goes up to its full level, right? You can become possessed. As long as you keep your fear meter down, you can't become possessed.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll just be randomly possessed if your fear meter gets too high.
Yeah.
And so there could be a purpose, which is like it's trying to convey, like, I'm the one who did this. As opposed to like, oh my God, what happened to both of you? But if the other one's holding the other one's scalp and like drops it in front of him and is like acting weird, then you're like, she did it.
Right.
And I'm now afraid of her.
Yeah.
Which then now makes me more susceptible.
Oh, I really like that. Yeah. I really like that the fear level is a factor in the gameplay for Evil Dead. And that's cool to like think of it in this scenario too with the movie. Yeah. There you go. That's a good explanation.
Yeah, it works. Why not? I don't think anyone thought about that but me. They just saw the scalp drop and they're like, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, he's the one that says, like, this drone wouldn't decapitate you, right? It would just mess up your face, which, of course, it messes up his girlfriend's face, and then he gets decapitated.
Yep.
But not by the drone, by her.
Yeah.
So it's a little double foreshadowing there. He does get decapitated. It's just not by the drone like you might think, because he's like, oh, that thing wouldn't decapitate you. And you're like, that thing's going to decapitate him. But it doesn't. It does exactly what he said it would.
Yeah.
It would screw up her face, right? And then he gets decapitated. Yeah. And his head gets thrown up on the dock, and he's like...
Yeah, that was gnarly. I liked that a lot. I always like when decapitations, when the head is, like, moving and twitching after, because I'm just like...
And while I think the title card, of course, is awesome, and I think we all can agree that this is the best title card in the franchise.
Absolutely.
The only thing I would have changed when it came to that is I would have had her continue to keep rising along with the title. She stops, and the camera keeps going, and then it comes up over the mountains, and she's just stationary. I think it would have been cooler if she rose with it in unison.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. When I was looking at the shot, I was like, oh, I think this would have been more visually appealing if she was like, it would have felt like she was bringing the title up with her.
Right.
Right, like a sun rising.
Sure, yeah.
And she'd already risen, but it was like she rose and stopped, then it rose. So I guess it works.
Yeah.
I just...
You like them together.
Yeah, but maybe they tried it that way and she got too high and she was blocking the thing, right?
Maybe, yeah.
But I feel like with the angle, it's such a minor nitpick.
Oh,
I don't care. I still think it's rad. I just was thinking it when I was watching. I'm like, I would have had her to keep rising because I think not only visually would have worked, but it would have worked as like a, like literal. Right? Like she's an evil dead and she's rising.
Yeah.
Right with it. But in that moment, she is an evil dead who is risen.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's rising. Maybe if it was the Evil Dead Rising, it would have worked. Then they would have used that. Okay, I'm done.
I love the title card. It's super
Yeah, it's great. Okay. So we've got Beth, the groupie, and she's preggers from being a groupie whore.
Brigante.
No. And so she's got to run home to Sissy Ellie.
Yeah.
And we don't really get anything. I would have liked a little bit more of her band life. See her go out on stage and maybe like be in some... I know she's not in the band. She's like a sound tech or guitar tech or whatever. But I don't know. I think that would have been a cool moment to have some like... It's a scene I'm sure some people would have been like, cut.
Right.
Maybe they did shoot it. But I always like band, like, show scenes where they play some cool music and show... Because there's always been a correlation between, like, metal or punk rock music and horror movies.
Yeah.
And getting, like, a cool band on stage with her there doing her business as they played... I don't know. It would have been a cool character moment for her to build her up a little bit more as even more likable. But I like her already.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, and also I think, sure, yeah, I already like her a lot, but I think, showing more of her band life would have made a bigger contrast between like what she's going into, which is motherhood. But I also feel like not showing that much about it, like just kind of showing a snippet and then her transitioning immediately into like, I need help and like, how do I navigate this? And then all the events that unfold is also like a good contrast to it, because it's like that part of her life is over, so there's no point like dwelling on it. But I don't know. I'm with you. It would have been cool to see just because of the horror and like metal or punk correlation, as you said.
You think the guy who knocked on the door is the guy who knocked her up?
Maybe. I don't know.
I bet you there will be a fan theory in the future with this film that her sister's husband who knocked her up.
Oh. But they live in like totally different places?
They do, but she visits.
But she hasn't visited,
visited in a while
or something, at least. She hasn't talked to her. I mean, the
in months.
husband and
Right?
Ellie split up like 2.5 months ago or something like that.
I didn't think it'd been that long.
Yeah, because she calls her. She's like, I called you 2 months ago. Like, I called you once
2
whenever
months.
we, like...
Some people
broke
take
up
a little
and then-
while to find out they're pregnant, though. Like, a couple months, right?
I mean,
'Cause,
that
like,
would be...
Let's say they banged, and then she left, and then he leaves her, like, the next day, because he's like, I shouldn't have done that.
That would be really messed up. That would
I thought maybe that's where they were going to go with it at first.
Okay.
Was like, he left because she slept with him,
Yeah.
and then we're going to find out he was the father.
I didn't even think of that, but that would have added a ton of drama. Excuse me.
Because then she would have, like, felt like she deserved it.
Sure.
Or, like, her sister was mad. I thought, because we did, like, the drug addiction thing last time to, like, keep them in the building.
Yeah.
Or in the forest. I thought maybe, or the woods. Is there a difference? What's the difference?
No.
The woods and the forest?
I don't think there's a difference.
There's probably a difference, right?
Size?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, woods are smaller and a forest is bigger?
I don't know. You tell me. But yeah, I just thought maybe she would like feel more guilt and be like, when the sister found out that her sister was not only pregnant, but it was pregnant with her husband's kid, and that's why he left, and she hasn't been like then when she started to like freak out and act weird, the sister would be like, this is all my fault. Like, she lost it because of this. So I kind of thought that's might be where they went with it.
Okay.
Just as like a reason for why she's sticking around. But they went with like, the stairs are out.
I mean, yeah.
Which is fine. And very Evil Dead, right? Like,
yes.
the bridge is out and Ash can't get out of there, right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of a replay of that idea.
Yeah, but it works really well.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a high-rise building, and if you can't get out of the building, I mean, you can't jump out the window.
No, exactly. There's
right? They're on the 14th floor.
Yeah.
You're just committing suicide. So
right.
Yeah. Anyways, so I like the family dynamic. I think they got a really good family dynamic here. So good on them for that.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to have her dyeing her hair red.
Yes.
Because it's kind of foreshadowing of, like, you know, all the blood.
Right, yeah.
Right? Like, she's got like this head of blood, it looks like, and it's like, oh, it's going to be way worse than that soon.
Oh my god, I know. Yeah, I really like their dynamic too. I think that they have a very believable one, and also her dyeing her hair is just like very relatable for like I guess now she's a single mom. With 3 kids, and just felt really like realistic, and I liked it a lot.
How many banks are 14 stories tall?
I don't know. I don't know, but sometimes businesses have like different floors, like the bank is on one floor, and then there's, although I don't know, I guess banks probably would
probably in big cities,
business,
yeah, that's big.
And they're in LA, so
yeah. You're right. Maybe there's just office buildings on top.
Yeah.
Right, but they were then retrofitted with like apartments.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know how expensive it is to turn an office building into a residential building. Sounds like it would be expensive, but
yeah, which is when I found out there was like a bank, and the bank's vault was in the basement.
Yeah.
I was like, a 14-story bank. I mean, I know the Federal Reserve in New York is pretty freaking big, but that's like, I mean, I only know about that building because of Die Hard with a Vengeance, let's be honest. And I don't know if it's accurate to what it's actually like, but like the vault down below is just like cages and cages of gold. But I think that might just be a movie thing. I don't know. I don't know what that is. But it's supposedly in Die Hard with a Vengeance. It's the biggest gold storage in the world.
It's
bigger than Fort Knox, like way bigger, supposedly.
Well, I don't know.
Is that real? I should Google that at some point in my life, because I've accepted that as truth since like 1995.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never seen a bank. I guess.
I mean, yeah, it could be like, there's the bottom floors, like the basements where the vaults are kept, and then there's like a main floor where people go in to like do their transactions, and then on top of those floors are all of the like offices for the different banks.
Because if you go to like Phoenix, right, we have our literal biggest building in Arizona is the Chase building.
Yeah. And
that's not a bank. Like,
no,
that's a bank office building.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have a bank below where you can go in and like do Chase business.
I mean, they probably have like an ATM at least.
You think they have a vault down below?
Maybe.
For money? No.
I don't know. I don't know.
Is there? I've been to downtown Phoenix to see Suns games, but I've never really paid attention to the Chase building because it's not close enough.
Next time we are there.
I don't go into cities like into the the business sides and like look around. I don't. Those places are always so lame to me.
Yeah, they are.
Right? It's just like business buildings. Like, what the fuck would I be there for unless I was working there?
Right.
Or doing business there, and what business would I have doing with Chase Bank like that? All right. Okay, the earthquake in this movie says it's a 5.5. I'm calling it
I know.
bullshit.
I mean, I've never been in an earthquake before, but like,
I have.
It seems like that would be a lot higher because it literally breaks the ground.
Foundation
in half
is fucking
and
like destroyed. The whole building shaking, dude. There's no way.
the
it's a
stairs
5.5.
are collapsed
There's
from
no
the
way.
earthquake. And
There's
it
no
is
way.
an old, but like they are like there's multiple references to how old the building is and how like out of, I was gonna say out of shape it is, out of like it's not out of anything. It's just like not kept up well
Yeah.
because it's so old.
Yeah.
So I guess like maybe it could be a lower
You're not.
impact
You're not.
earthquake.
No, you're not breaking the concrete foundation that is completely together like that with a 5.5.
The other thing, though, too, is that, maybe there was an earthquake that was that, but what's happening in the building,
Sure,
obviously, is the evil
so
Kandarian demon
my
energy.
question was going to be, do we think, because the building's about to be condemned, and it's going to lose its inhabitants and its chance,
Yeah.
is the earthquake the evil? And if so, is that like before the book's read from? Do the Evil Dead, do the Kandarian demons, do they have any kind of power before the book is read from?
I don't know.
I feel like once the book's being read from is when the powers like come to them. But before that, can they influence earthquakes to like lead people to the book?
Maybe. I mean, it kind of seems like that's what happens here, obviously, because they would have never found the book if it wasn't for the earthquake. So
Sure, but when the
I
building
guess that's
got
the case.
condemned, it would have brought in a bunch of, like, construction workers and
Yeah.
all sorts of things to tear down the building or whatever, and they would have found the vault, which would have then released the book as well.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, in tearing down that building, they would. Now, if they demolished the building, though, and they put shape charges and everything in there, and they collapsed the whole building, and
I
then
think
had a
that's what
cleanup crew come through and take all that shit out of there, that book would be gone.
Yeah.
That book would be gone.
There's
man.
also like a trend with these Evil Dead films, where it's like the uber curious person kind of discovers it and is just like, that's, the downfall of everybody is that they're just like, what is this? Let me continue to look at it and listen to this tape that I found. Even though there's this creepy chant on there and the guy is literally saying like, stuff about demons.
Well, I mean, Danny tries to take it off, right?
He does.
But it's too
and
late.
I do love that it like prevents him from stopping it.
No,
I think that's
it's too late at
super
that
cool.
point.
Yeah.
Once the book's read from, you can't stop.
But I get the fascination too. Like,
Sure.
if you found a book that looked like that and it was like inked in blood and shit, and it had all those
Inked in blood and shit.
had all those rad pictures in there. I mean, I'd be looking at it. I'd be like, "Whoa,
Sure.
What is this?" And this is why I would bring Deadites to the world.
Curiosity possessed the cat.
Yes.
I kind of feel bad for Beth that she, on the day that she realizes she's potentially going to be a mother, that she gets this like kind of wake up call of, oh, dad just took off.
Yeah.
Like that can happen to you. Like that's a shitty thing to find out the day you find out you're pregnant. Like, oh yeah, dad just left me with these 3 kids, and you're sitting there with a baby. Like,
yeah, but we don't.
I don't want to get refed, but I don't know. Maybe she doesn't even know who the dad is.
That was
If
kind
she
of
really
my
is a groupie,
impression.
supposedly, and she's just screwing everybody, like in
Yeah.
every, which is fine. I mean, if that's the lifestyle you want to live, totally cool.
That was definitely my impression, was that was like kind of her lifestyle. That I didn't feel like she had a boyfriend or anybody. Like she just, was doing her single thing and didn't
Do you think
use
she even
protection.
knew who the boyfriend was?
Maybe not.
Or the boyfriend, the dad?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, maybe not. And so, like, I didn't feel like she was thinking, like, who's the father? It was more like, I have to raise a kid on my own now. Like, or, get an abortion is obviously the 2 options that she has.
Yeah.
And yeah, the dad in this is super shitty. Just being like, child support is parenting from afar is the lamest thing ever. And, like, to be the kids in that situation and know, I mean, they probably don't know all of it, but to, it just would suck. It would really suck.
It's cool to me that they address the 3 Necronomicons in this. That this is one of the 3. And so we get the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead franchise, right? The original trilogy. And even the Ash vs. Evil Dead show. All right, that's the one, and then you get the second one, which is in Evil Dead 2013, and then we get the third one, which is in this film.
Yeah.
So it points out that all of these things exist in the same universe. Like, this is a connection to me, is by saying this is a third book, and that there's 2 other Necronomicon Book of the Dead's out there.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, confirms that these are all taking place in the same universe.
Okay. Yeah.
But maybe not. That's how I read it, though. Get it? That's how I read it.
Yeah, because it's a book.
You got it?
You got it.
You got it?
Got it.
And let's see. Yeah, the earthquake in this, because I've been in them, it's, man, being in a high rise, scary stuff.
Yeah. When
something like that's happening. But if you're ever in a building and there's an earthquake, get under a door frame. Just FYI. And the book in this movie is so, like, this is, of course, anybody who is like a Harry Potter fan. This is the Monster Book of Monsters from Hagrid. It's so that I thought it was going to start chomping.
Sure, yeah.
I
love it, though. I think it's really cool that it has the teeth, and that's what draws blood too.
And when he bleeds on the book, not only does it suck it in, but it also, like, its veins get thicker.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
It's gross.
It comes to life.
Yeah.
Right? It's the skin that it is, comes back to life. And we see that by the veins pulsing, which is fantastic. I wish they would have, like, been more like a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Right? Or something in them once that happened. But that was super cool. And I like that the reason they're in LA and that they keep the book there is because it's the city of angels. And the eggs that she's throwing in the pan, is that blood from her hand or her body, or the eggs bloody now because of the
evil,
right? Yeah, because that's something in
that's in a ton of like demonic possession movies that I don't know why.
It's like, well, it's because it's like corrupted life.
Yeah, the eggs are bloody.
Right, because the eggs obviously are symbolic of fertility and new life, and when the yolk is bloody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't tell because some of the yolks looked like they were totally normal, and some of them had like blood, and I was like, "Is that blood from her hand, or are the eggs gone bloody because of the demonic spirits around them?"
No, it's the eggs are bloody.
I like that this movie really just wastes zero time. Like, we get the cold opening as always, which is of course a setup for later, and we get like this kind of circular film in that way. Bookending, but the film, once, like, from when we meet Beth to when we meet Ellie and her kids, from like that moment of finding the pregnancy, her coming over to the house, and Ellie getting possessed as Dan reads from the book, it's quick.
Super quick.
It's quick, but it works.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they've established the characters well enough that you care about the dynamic. And another thing I was really worried about with this film, even though Cassie does have a bit of plot armor to a degree, and I figured she would die. I would have really enjoyed if she died, personally, just because it would be so unexpected for this thing. But at the same time, because I'm a dad, like, I was like, oh, protect her with it, protect her with everything you got. But like every other kid in this movie, even though Dan is like borderline not a kid, they're still kids to some degree. I'd say they're teenagers, later teens.
Yeah.
Dan and Bridget are both like mid to late teens. So they're technically kids. But in horror movies, late teens, they're fucking dead. Right? Like, it's the kids like that lives next door. Who gets like his arms ripped off and is like totally mutilated.
Dude, I know. I wasn't, when we first saw this in theaters, I actually was not expecting like Bridget and Dan to be injured. I thought that the kids were going to make it out.
Oh, no.
I was like...
Have you seen Halloween? Have you seen any slasher movie of the 80s?
I know.
Teens are
I know, but for some
the menu.
reason, I was just like, I wasn't expecting it with this one. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kids next door that get like mutilated for sure is pretty gnarly, and that's, I mean, it's great. I really like all of that when it's like the fish eye, you know, through the the peephole, and we get to see all that stuff happening out there. It's super cool.
I would say the scene in which Ellie hits the ceiling out of the bathtub. Everyone's out the house at that point.
Dude, at that
There's
point,
no
because
way.
it's like, there's honestly, I don't know. Even like when she's in bed and she like opens her eyes and there's like a fly and she like looks over, like she's so scary at that point that I don't know. I mean, if it's somebody you love, right? Like if it's someone you care about, you're gonna look past all those red flags. But she looks.
You're not looking
dead.
past those red flags.
But when they fly up to the ceiling,
you'll
and
look
are,
past
like, up there.
Normal red flags. You're not looking past demonic red flags.
That was terrifying. And
if my brother Nathan flew out of the freaking bathtub and was stuck to the ceiling and then crawled across the ceiling and was like,
dude,
I would be gone.
No,
I would be gone.
I know, like that's
There's no
awful. Way. It's so bad. And, you know, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is such a quick one, but after, like, when, you know, they back out of the bathroom.
Yeah. And
she, like, walks out, and, like, she's got this, like, horrifying smile on her face, and, like, just kind of, like, looks over at them with her eyes. It's so scary. Like, definitely, like, one of my favorites, and such a quick scene, but, like,
yeah.
Awful, but wonderful.
We've got... I should really quickly say that, you know, and this is true of all the movies, but man, the Deadites are just so mean-spirited.
Yes.
Like, and that's good. I mean, that's what they should be. They're demons.
Yeah.
Right? They want to inflict every kind of pain.
Yes.
They want physical, mental, every kind you can imagine.
Yeah.
They get this, like, sixth sense. They get this intuition, this... you know, like psychic ability where they can read situations and be like, I know what you did and I know all these things about you, and they love to just press on all those terrible buttons.
Yeah.
So I love that this movie stays with that.
Sure.
And everything that's said is so mean, and everything is done is so mean. Yeah. Right? Like, they could just kill you.
No, but they want to torture you.
They could just grab you and break your neck. They're strong. They don't have to. No, they get off.
Yes.
On the torture. This is what they drives them. This is what they want to do. Yeah. They want to inflict pain. Right? Killing you is actually... it's
a mercy.
It's the last thing they want to do. They want to keep you alive, and the only reason to kill you is to possess you.
Yes.
Right? Like, once they're done with you. But, like, I feel like the people they can hurt more... like, with the Evil Dead, I feel like, while your fear might get you susceptible, I feel like, you know, they do like taking stronger ones to prey on weaker ones.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But it's harder to take the stronger ones. That's why Ash has been able to survive throughout, because he's the hero. Right?
And he's... yeah. I mean, sure, all the stuff that's said towards Beth, especially with, like, her pregnancy, like, I hate having things in my tummy, and, like, all that stuff is just really creepy and wonderful.
We get the eyeball gag here, straight out of Evil Dead 2.
That's great.
With Bobby Joe! So we get a little homage there. And... Bridget's face wound that she gets starts to spread through her, like, veins, like Ash's hand in Evil Dead 2 before he cuts it off. But unfortunately,
you can't cut your face off.
You can't cut your head off.
Nope.
So, I mean, you could, but it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna help.
Nope.
Yeah. Bridget's swallowing the glass.
Oh my gosh.
It, like, coming through her throat.
So, yeah.
That's gnarly.
Rough. That's really rough.
Of course, the cheese grater scene. You have to look pretty close to see the actual skin, like, peeled like cheese on the side of it, because you see the scar, like the the gore here on the calf.
Yeah.
But like you have to look inside the grater to actually see
the skin.
the
It's so
the Play-Doh skin.
Oh my god, it would hurt so horribly.
I've always wanted to do a cheese grater in a movie. I've always thought that was such a gnarly weapon.
Yes.
So it was good to see her.
Yeah.
The whole peephole scene, everything with the peephole is great.
Everything, yeah, I love it.
It's a good tool.
Really good
for that. Mm-hmm. And you got Snaffney going up through Bridget's head.
Yeah.
I had to make a blowjob joke both times that happened to Kaylee. Once in theaters and once at home.
Yeah.
You can fill that joke in yourself. Use your imagination. Not very much, though. Pretty obvious. And, man, Danny's fucking really injured. Like, badly before he's finally taken over.
It's so sad with him because, like, honestly, like, I get why Bridget's mad at him and everything, but, like, he agreed that he was going to put it back in the morning. Like, you know, he didn't know what was going to happen, and he, feel like, is genuinely just like, oh my god, like, he's, of course, sorry, and there's nothing that he can do.
Yeah.
And he does try to help, and then just, like, his death, you know, when he's looking over at Cassie, and it's just like, I'm sorry. Like, oh, it's heartbreaking.
I do love Bridget in the like sheet ghost look when she's kind of floating across the ground and comes out and is fighting him and is all and then gets stabbed and the blood's coming.
Yes.
I think all that stuff with the sheet is really, really great. And scary and of course like kind of classic ghostly shape. So I really liked that.
Yeah, especially because, like, you know what's underneath it is just as terrifying.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Are you all, like, Night of the Living Dead under there? Very Beetlejuice-esque there.
Yeah.
Night of the Living what? I would have been scared of this. Okay. I love that movie. And we're getting a Beetlejuice 2, supposedly now. They confirmed. It went into production yesterday, with Jenna Ortega as Lydia Dietz's daughter.
Yeah.
And Tim Burton directing and all that. So it looks like that's finally actually happening, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But legacy sequels 20, 30, 40 years after the fact.
We'll see how that goes.
There's sometimes they work. Blade Runner 2049 rules, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they can work, but comedies rarely do. Right, and Beetlejuice is mostly a comedy, so I don't know, but with Michael Keaton coming back as Beetlejuice, 1 ticket, please. Yeah. 2. Ellie climbing around on the ceiling behind Beth, very, very Hereditary.
Yeah,
right.
I hate it.
This is an obvious like thing right here. It just reminded me so much of Hereditary coming through the ceiling and everything. Except for in this, it's as I'd said, no one ever accused Evil Dead of being subtle. With Hereditary, you don't
oh my god, yeah.
You have to be told it's there by like for most audience members. I noticed it because I'm always looking because I'm trained, but like most people never even notice. Like dude, I talked to them about it and I was like, her up in the ceiling. They're like, I didn't even see that.
Oh my god,
I'm like, dude, if you do see it,
it scarred me. It scarred me so bad.
Yeah.
But I've always been like, when people start climbing on the ceiling, especially when another character is facing away from them, like that's always messed me up in movies. And even though this is very not subtle, like you clearly see her come out of the vent, I still think it's very effective and terrifying. And I love, you know, when she gets down and her reflection in the window and all of that. I think that's really cool.
Probably my favorite, like, aesthetic scene in this is with Ellie, and it's when she becomes the phonogram.
Oh my god, yeah, that is so cool.
On the record, and then
oh my god,
and it comes through her mouth like a speaker.
Dude, yeah,
that's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's wonderful. She's so scary. Like just everything with her.
Yeah,
she is terrifying.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, me too.
For sure. She gets the scissors up the nose and then pulls them out.
Yeah.
We get a boomstick in here. Beth gets her hand on a boomstick and she blows her sister's arms and legs off. And then she has to become this amalgamation freaking creature fused together, which, you know, is kind of like another metaphor for motherhood.
Sure.
And like, you know, your kids being a part of you.
A family, right?
Right.
Like,
It's like a family demon.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they all come together as a family to kill her as one.
Yeah.
Right. I think I love all that stuff.
Me
it's
too.
just like when they become fused, I was like, this is fucking Evil Dead.
Yes.
This is fantastic. I love that kind of shit so much. Right. Like anytime where I feel like this always works for me. Anytime like a creature is made out of like multiple body parts and people all together in one thing.
I agree.
Right.
Me
It's very John Carpenter's
Of course,
The Thing, right?
yeah.
Like that's I think what we're always going to be reminded of by seeing that.
But even like the Blob,
Sure.
you know, like it is a very like it's just so inhuman,
Yes.
you know, and that is genuinely terrifying, and I loved it in this for sure.
And then the Dead by Dawn
Oh my gosh,
is definitely my favorite like Easter egg, so to speak, because it hasn't been referenced to my memory since the second movie, and I was just like, that's just not something that comes up again. But because like in Evil Dead 2, Ash gets possessed.
Yeah.
Then, you know, he gets taken and he's flown around outside and he's thrown like 10 miles going this way and that way, but then somehow he's just like 2 feet outside the cabin. I'll never understand that. But like it dies because the sun comes up.
Yeah.
And he's like, and the shape. So like the demons can't be alive during the daylight in Evil Dead 2. Like they're dead by dawn.
Right.
Right? As opposed to in this,
you're
gonna be dead by dawn.
Yeah.
And they kind of flip it instead.
Yeah.
Which is I don't really understand, because in Evil Dead 2, it's very much implied that the demons cannot operate during the day.
Right.
But then they completely abandon that in Army of Darkness and in Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yeah.
The demons are out in Ash vs. Evil Dead like all the time.
Yeah.
Like day and night. So I don't know. They definitely don't stick with that, but that's always the implication I get. That I don't understand. I don't know what else I would take from that.
Yeah.
Is that in Evil Dead 2, they die by dawn, but then they come back at night, so they're not really dead. They're just sleep by dawn.
Sleep by dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paused.
Right.
Paused by dawn.
Yeah, I love the Dead by Dawn in this, and the flipping of it being like the humans are going to be dead by dawn. So
that's
really,
one of
really
those
cool.
moments where I'm in the theater and I audibly like say "fuck yeah" or something. Like I try not to speak in movies or clap or anything and be annoying, but there are moments like that. Dead by Dawn in this movie when we were in the theater was like I said something.
Yeah, you
and
did.
clapped for like a second. Even though no one else in the theater cared.
They were all like, "What?"
I was just like, "Yeah!" I think that literally was what I did. I was like, "Yes!"
Yeah.
Right? Like I was so excited by that, to hear Dead by Dawn. Everyone screaming it was just wonderful to me. So my very favorite scene in the whole film for sure. But as I said, my aesthetic favorite scene is the finger needle mouth speaker thing. But my favorite scene in the whole film is that, just because of the reference to the film and how it was done. I love it all. The elevator filling with blood, of course, is a reference and homage to The Shining.
Yeah.
But they dropped 14 floors.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. They'd be dead.
They'd probably be dead. Yeah.
There's a bunch of I don't know. There's a bunch of fucking liquid in there with them, so maybe it cushions them to some degree.
Like floating in it.
I don't know, but there's a very subtle thing in there though, because it shows it's like real quick kind of glance, like blink and you miss it kind of thing, where the blood's going up over the weight limit.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's letting you know like
that it's gonna fall.
That's what breaks the elevator, right? Not that the demons dropped it, but that the blood got too heavy
Yeah.
and the elevator
Like,
broke
it just
because
broke
of
from
that,
Mm-hmm.
which is great, right? Like it's trying to kill them, but in doing so, it doesn't know the limitations of the real world,
Yeah.
and that's what frees them, right? So I think that's pretty cool. So they get out of there kind of like on a screw up by
Mm-hmm.
the Deadites, putting a bunch of blood in an elevator and not realizing that that weight's gonna break.
Yeah.
Where they get all that blood, I have no idea. They can just make blood appear out of thin
All the
air.
blood from the past victims.
There you go. Why not? I mean, this franchise is always filled with blood, but
Yeah.
that's like definitely one of the bloodiest scenes ever. And then yeah, we get the big fight
Mm-hmm.
down in the garage against the creature, and yeah, I mean the kid gets almost. I mean the kid's about to get a chainsaw to the neck,
Yeah.
which would have been super gnarly if they went through
my
with
God,
it.
yeah.
I feel like they didn't do it just because the film wouldn't have gotten an R rating. Like if they took a chainsaw to that kid's head and actually cut her head off,
Yeah.
that would have been. I would have fucking stood up and cheered. That would have
It
been
would've been
insane
so
to me.
insane.
In the movie I make, that would have happened. But of course, they'd never do it in this kind of film. Her age, a chainsaw to the head like that in such a grotesque way.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine it, but it would have been rad. But yeah, her taking a chainsaw, and of course she grabs the chainsaw. I think at this point she still only just has the shotgun. I think she only has the shotgun, but she does the "come get some," ash line. That might be a little forced for some people, but I still like it.
I loved it. Yeah. I had no problem with it at all. I just
Yeah. And then the kid actually helps, which is great.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah, a lot
I
of
can't
times.
stand
Right.
when. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you should.
No, yeah, when the kid is just kind of there to be protected.
Not even just kids.
Or other people in general, like freaking what's her face from Night of the Living Dead, Barbara. Like when they just do nothing to help whatsoever. But especially in this scenario, like she is actually like paying attention and helps.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm not saying it's not possible that it would really happen, but when someone just stands there and watches you get attacked and does nothing to help at all, and they know they're next, so it's not only you're just being like unhelpful,
Yeah.
but you're also only hurting yourself.
Right.
Because this thing's distracted. This is the time to hit it.
Yeah.
Because you have help still.
Right.
Like, you do not want to face this thing once it's killed that person, right? You can catch it off guard. You can catch it when its back is turned to you, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's moments, we see it all the time in movies that we've watched.
Yes, we do.
Where I'm screaming at the TV, do something to help!
Yes.
You could absolutely stop this situation right now if you just pick something up and hit this person.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God, I hate it. So the
I
girl
know.
comes over and stops the blades.
Yeah.
And her foot hits right there. Right? Anytime I see it, that kind of machine now, of course, I'm immediately reminded of good old Mikey's demise in Halloween Ends. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, but you've had enough time. But that's just very much that kind of machine now.
Yeah.
But yeah, she stops it right as her foot hits, and then the thing jumps down. She uses the chainsaw and just right up in there. So yeah, she wants to be like Mike.
She does.
Yeah,
Who
get
doesn't?
grinded. And yeah, I like that she is about to leave and turns around and is like, I'm just gonna take this chainsaw with me, just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Just in case.
I would have loved this movie to end like Demons,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Where the whole
sure.
city has now been taken over, and it like sets up the sequel.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't really pay that off in Demons 2,
Yeah.
like they should have. They just moved it to another building.
Right.
And I was like, no, I want to see the city.
Yeah.
But I
like
get it.
everything.
It's
It's a
budgetary
huge
restraints.
thing, yeah.
But with this movie grossing $100 million, I want Lee Cronin to be hired on again to do a sequel
Yeah.
where Evil Dead is now in the city. Like, this is what we've talked about. This is what I wanted with a Thing sequel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted them to go and investigate the Antarctica research, facility, and get some of the shit, bring it back to the mainland, right? And then and then it gets loose in the city.
Yeah.
And if like the whole city is like filled with people who might or might not be things.
Yeah.
That would
Terrifying.
just be
Oh my God.
so cool to me.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to address the question of is it like McGreedy or is it Childs that is the thing. I don't really care. They address this very much in the video game from PlayStation 2. They very much answer that question. But regardless, I'd love to see something like that with Evil Dead Rise, right? I don't know what the title would be. I'm sure I could come up with something pretty quick, but like, you know, something set in the city like that and the whole city's taken over. But there you go.
Yeah.
Evil Dead Rise. We talked about this. It's got to be over an hour. This is a long one.
Oh yeah, it's
this
definitely
is a real long one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Who stayed around?
Who stuck for the whole thing?
Everyone who stuck around, comment below.
Yeah.
Every single person. Just so we have a count. If you stayed this long, you can take, if this is an hour, you can take 5 seconds and just say, I'm still here. I'm still standing.
I'm still standing.
Yep.
After that review.
All right, guys. That was our Evil Dead Rise discussion. Hopefully, Kaylee pressed record. Otherwise, I am filing for divorce. Just so I can remarry her. Because she's the best.
The best.
All right, guys. Until next time, adios.
Bye.